Well, moments ago, the House of Representatives began voting on the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, also known as the SAVE Act. This legislation amends the National Voter Registration Act and would require states to both obtain proof of citizenship from voters for federal elections, as well as purge non-citizens from the voter rolls. Sounds pretty straightforward. Well, the Biden administration has already pledged to veto this measure should it pass both chambers of Congress. The White House said federal law already prohibits non-citizens from voting. So then why wouldn't they support this bill? Joining me now from the House floor with an update is Congressman Greg Murphy. He serves on the House Ways and Means Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, and the Committee on House Administration. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of North Carolina. Dr. Murphy, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Tony. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing very well. I know I was monitoring the situation before we went on the air. Voting had just begun. What's the latest on the SAVE Act?
Well, I think, I think it'll be a Republican pass. It's silly that we are dealing with these kind of things, Tony. Remember Hillary Clinton was all about Russian interference. If what we witnessed in Washington, D.C., and we fortunately had to override it in Congress, is that they wanted people who were nationals of other countries, Chinese nationals, Russian nationals, to vote in D.C. elections. And yes, supposedly it is illegal, but when illegals are brought into this country and they're urged to sign up for benefits, there's a quick little tab that you can mark that says you are a citizen. You don't have to provide any verification for that, and you could vote. So, no, this is the right thing to do. People do not need to be voting in our elections who are not citizens of this country.
So are the Democrats kind of exposing themselves in terms of their intentions by being so dead set against this common sense piece of legislation?
Well, I think some are, Tony, and some of the parts of these legislations is it puts folks in tween districts on the fence. It'll be very interesting to see how some of the folks who are in very, very tight races vote on this. I would imagine they would vote with the Republicans on this issue, because that's the last thing is you want a TV ad pointing out that some illegal immigrant was allowed to vote in your election.
So as I understand it, current law does make it illegal if a non-citizen votes, if they get caught. What this simply does is says, hey, let's make sure at the beginning when they register, when they sign up for government assistance or whatever it might be that triggers automatic voter registration, that they have to prove that they're a citizen before they're registered.
Correct.
I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because at this point, Tony, you don't have to prove anything. There's no documentation. There's no requirement of reporting. It's just that it's illegal. So here we're telling the states you have to prove, or you have to find proof that they are a citizen.
So let's switch topics for just a moment, because so much going on in Washington, D.C. Given the conditions our country is facing, inflation, the border, of course, this is related to the border with millions coming across illegally. We've got adversaries on the march. I think America is being reminded of the dangerous scenarios that we're facing, given that NATO is meeting in Washington, D.C. Given what we've seen of President Biden recently, is he up for the job and what is facing the next president?
In one word, Tony, no. I don't believe he is. I think he is. It's now been shown to the world that he's really not been in charge. This administration has been run by a cadre of non-elected officials, advisors, maybe Schumer, maybe Pelosi, in dictating policy. But as an individual himself, I think it's very, very sad, and I think it's very unfortunate, but I do not believe he is capable of being commander-in-chief.
Dr. Murphy, I know you're a medical doctor. I've been watching the White House press briefings in the afternoon, and it seems to be all about the president's health. I mean, if that has to be the focus of discussion, it would probably suggest it's time to move on.
Yeah. Well, there's one person that can say that, and that's Joe Biden. And here's the thing, Tony. It's all centered around whether he's healthy enough to run. Why don't we talk about the disaster that's been the country for the last 3.5 years? with the border, with inflation, with much of our foreign policy, what happened in Afghanistan, the absolute disaster, the woke military. Let us get back to actually the issues, much less, he's not able to even implement them. But I don't think, again, I'll go back to the point, I don't think he's been the one leading the stream anyway.
So this is, when you look at this, and I think it's a really good point. I mean, I think it does inflame, or I think possibly encourage, embolden our adversaries when they're not sure if the guy at the wheel is steady. But we don't want to miss the underlying policies that we've had to live with for the last 3.5 years, which have led us to this point of global chaos, high inflation, and as you pointed out, an invasion, a soft invasion on our borders. So those issues can't get lost in discussing the weekly doctor visit that the president has to make.
Yeah, think about it. Say he was healthy, say he was fine. I don't think he should be reelected merely because on his administration's performance, much less his inability to do the job. So, again, this is it's very interesting to see the Democrats in the hall basically just try to avoid reporters because they don't want to answer the question that's pretty damn obvious to the rest of the country.
But Dr. Murphy, one final question on this front. It does appear that the Democrats are now beginning to see not just his policies, but more importantly, they see an election liability when it comes to his ability, his cognitive ability, and there are one by one Democrats peeling off. How much longer can he take that?
That's the big question, Tony. That is a big question. He says he's in for it. His wife is pushing him for it. Other folks in the, in his inner circle are pushing for it. But at some point, I think the glass breaks. And they're in a bad spot. Democrats are, regardless of what they do. The momentum is clearly not in their favor.
Yeah. Dr. Murphy, I think you've got to get back to the floor to vote. The motion to recommit failed, so I think they're going to move on to the final vote. I want to thank you for joining us. As always, great to talk with you, Dr. Greg Murphy.
Great. Thanks so much, my friend. God bless.
All right, Dr. Greg Murphy of North Carolina.